comic books, cause I don't wanna look at nothing. This world's too much. I swallowed all I could.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Trade Talk. This is episode 29, and this is the Late Tapes, Volume 5. That's right, the 5th episode where I'm still working through my backlog of books that I read during the period of time that I didn't record, basically for the first 2 months of the new year here. So, for whatever reason, just fell off the map and didn't record any episodes, and this is me basically making up that lost time by releasing on a more frequent schedule for the next couple of weeks episodes of these late tape volumes, which are going to include me talking about all the books I talked about during that period of time that I wasn't recording, because even though I wasn't recording doesn't mean I wasn't reading. So so basically just talking about all the books I read, and then it will be back to a weekly schedule by the end of these like late tape volumes. So when you see those end, it basically means that we're back on a weekly schedule. So whether you're a first time listener or this is your return to the show, check back. There'll be lots of these late tape episodes by the time I'm done, and then, like I said, continue to come back week to week, because hopefully it should be smooth sailing from here on out. All right, so without further ado, though, let's talk about the books I've read here today for you guys. I'm actually going to be talking about 4 books today. 2 of them similar in the sense that they're both Punisher epics. So I might as well start with those. I'm a big fan of the Epic Collection format from Marvel Comics. I haven't read too many of them yet, but I have been collecting a bunch of them, like of certain characters that I kind of know I want, certain periods of their previous runs from 80s and 90s and stuff like that. Things I've heard well regarded, things that I've never actually had the chance to collect because some of this stuff has gone uncollected, and just stuff that I'm more comfortable reading in this format as opposed to any other. It's a great bang for your buck. Normally you're anywhere from $35 to $40 retail, these epic collections, but you're talking about like a $400 or $500 page count in these epic collections, right? So I mean, it's a great deal, and not only that, you get things put out in like chronological order of the years that this material came out, and they also try to collect extra stuff that was coming out at that time too. Like, for instance, with the Punisher ones here, they've collected some of like the original graphic novels or like prestige format kind of issue, one-shot issue type things that would come out for Punisher, and actually fit those into these epic collections as well, even though they're usually outside of like the main storylines of the main Punisher series run. They kind of put it in as extras. They kind of pad out these epic collections. So it's actually really good, because there are a lot of good things around that time that they were putting out like that were outside of the regular run, especially for some of their more popular characters. And then, like, I think in the 80s, that's when they started those original graphic novels of that Marvel started doing, like with God Loves, Man Kills, for instance, which is a classic, X-Men, Chris Claremont story, and like, again, wasn't in the regular run. That was its own OGN, so original graphic novel. So like, some substantial stories were being told in these kind of things, right? So to include them in the epic collections, I thought is really smart of them. So it's just a great format, great price point, great way to collect. The only thing is that they don't come out fast enough. I mean, for even the more popular characters, you might see 2 collections a year at this point, right? And for things like Spider-Man, which they've already started collecting all the way back from the 60s, it's going to take, multiple volumes to collect that. I mean, they're already, I think, at over 20 something volumes, and they also don't come out in order. So that's actually not too bad that they're doing it that way. I think that usually they try to keep major storylines that, like, in each one, like, most storylines that are contained within like an epic collection don't continue into the next one. I find sometimes they do, but they've done a pretty good job of rounding it out that way and collecting. I think their goal, they said, was to more so collect some of the previously uncollected material first, and for some of the lines they're working, they're doing the old stuff and they're doing like some newer stuff, and they're working towards the middle, it seems. Like that's actually what they're doing on Spider-Man currently right now. So For instance, they have all like this early Stanley Ditko stuff, and like, you know, going to the Buscema stuff, like John Romita Jr., all that kind of stuff. Or John Romita Sr., I should say, for back then. And so and then, you know, they got like the Maximum Carnage one that just came out recently, right? So like, you know, best of the 90s, right? So it's really cool what they're doing by doing that. And so I've been trying to read some more of these, and I actually got 4 that I wanted to talk about today. And like I mentioned, 2 of them are Punisher related ones. So these are Punisher volumes, and on the back of the Epic, it always says the Epic number in the collection as well as the years. So this is, first up, we got Kingpin Rules, which is Punisher Volume 3 in the Epic line. This is from 1988 to 1989. The material that is collecting in here collects Punisher 11 to 25 of the main series, as well as annuals 1 and 2. This is written by Mike Baron, and then you got Roger Salick with Mark Grunwald and Peter Sanderson. I believe those guys are mostly writing the annual material, the main series of Punisher that's in this, or at least some stories in the annual, because I think like one of the stories in the annuals would be like written by Mike Baron, and then the other ones would be like by different writers, right? Because they got like a 64-page annual that you don't normally do that format really anymore. Once in a while, you still see comics put out annuals, which now are somewhat pointless. I find sometimes they even try to tie it into the main storyline, which, you know, back then it was kind of like a separate thing, it seemed like, with these annuals, right? And it was and the page count was usually higher. So yeah, the annuals are okay in this, but I gotta say, I really enjoyed this Epic volume specifically for the art. Not that I didn't enjoy the writing, we'll get into that, but there's some great artists on this book for this time. I mean, we got Mark Texeira, Walt Spertasio, like a lot of these guys, you know, well, some of these guys I went on, like, you know, to do like a lot of stuff during the Image days. Larry Stroman, Shea Anton Pensa, I'm not as familiar with that person. Bill Reinhold and Eric Larson with Mike Vosberg, Paris Cullens, Todd Smith, Jim Lee, and Mark Bagley. Like, there's some good people, even some of the lesser names here that I'm not as familiar with. They did a pretty good job in this, I felt. And then you got like Scott Williams on inks there. You know, he was inking other people other than Jim Lee for, at this point as well. Al Williamson. Like, there's some good art in this volume, I thought. Like, you know, a lot of it was mostly by Walt Spertasio for the majority of the issues that are collected in the main series for this. But yeah, no, I really dug it. I thought there was for this time period, and seeing some of these guys' early works, it was fun to see. And basically, the Punisher back then, at this period of time, like, a lot of his stories are kind of like, they're different, I find. Like, he seems to actually take the time to investigate things a little bit more. Like, you actually see him like dress up and impersonate people, pretend like he's somebody else, like he'd go and track people, do a lot of intel. And this is actually before, at this point in time, I don't know, I know he's in the next volume that I'm going to talk about. I don't think he's in this as of yet. Microchip was with him. You know, Microchip, if you guys don't know, is like basically his intel, like tech kind of guy that helps him. I think in this volume still Microchip wasn't established. Oh no, he's there. Never mind. I'm wrong. Yeah, so it might have been something that Mike Baron even introduced. I'm not sure, because anyways, Mike Baron did a great job on his Punisher run. I really enjoyed a lot of these stories. Yeah, they're kind of zany. Yeah, they're kind of cheesy, some of them. Definitely of its time of the 90s, like, or I guess it's the late 80s, but like, not to a point where it's unenjoyable, though. It's just some of the storylines are kind of ridiculous, that he kind of, these situations that he gets himself into. But it's Punisher. It's ridiculous to begin with. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this guy's going around, you know, killing people. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this volume. I thought this is one of the better epics I've read. I mean, again, you have to be a fan of the character, I feel. But like, for instance, in this, like, I think this is the one with the school. There's a storyline where there's like essentially an underground like drug ring under a school, and like he gets like the help of like some sort of teacher like ends up signing up for like his war. Oh no, this is Kingpin Rules. Yeah, this is the one. So there's so yeah, there's like an underground operation going on underneath this high school in this one, and Punisher goes there, and basically it's like almost like Arnold in like Kindergarten Cop, like tries to disguise himself as like a teacher, and then he ends up finding out there's like this whole like they go underneath the actual school. There's like this whole ring of like kids that are like somehow helping like the Punisher by setting up like not the Punisher, the Kingpin, by setting up these bombs like and like blowing up other schools or this school and like other areas and stuff like that. So they're almost like terrorists and they're like working with like other countries to do this, and like the Kingpin, and it's a whole fucking convoluted weird thing. Like just the fact that there was a huge underground layer underneath the school, first off, is ridiculous. And that these kids are working with, and then like one of the teachers that works there, like that thinks he's like a hard ass, he like signs up like to help the Punisher, even though he says like, no, I don't need your help, but he ends up helping him anyways. And then there's another woman that's in this, that like one of Punisher's old, like I guess like war buddies or something, someone he's familiar with was with, and he ends up getting killed when they're on a mission. And then the woman turns out to be more of a badass than him, and like she, you know what I mean, like she's got all this like crazy like tactical training and stuff. Like it seems like she's basically like a woman Rambo essentially, and yeah, and then I'm just looking at the back here. It says delivering justice from New York to Japan. Yeah, and that's the thing. He does a lot of globe trotting in this. A lot of, you know, Punisher has sex, and I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's this volume or the next Epic Collection, which is also written by Mike Baron. But you actually see him, you know, hook up with a lady here and there, and it's just weird to see because like now it's kind of like I feel like the Punisher is more of just like a pure killing machine, whereas in this one, like he talks more. He's more charismatic, believe it or not. Just like, you know what I mean, just the way he kind of goes about things. He's still a killing machine, but it seemed that the Punisher stories, or like at least take on the character and what they wanted from him, was so much different at this point in time as that it eventually grew to be, right? So this was a lot of fun between the art and just like, you know, these weird out there stories involving the Punisher that I'm not really used to reading nowadays. This was enjoyable. I really like this Kingpin Rules. It's one of the better ones that I've read for Punisher as well, because I think I read his other I read one of the earlier volumes. I think it was volume 2, the one that was before this, and that was before Mike Baron. I think it was Chuck Dixon, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check 1 second. Yeah, so this was Stephen Grant, Joe Duffy, Mike Baron, and Ann Nesenti as the writers on this one. This was the Circle of Blood, the one that came before it, and I think Ann Nesenti is just because that Daredevil Punisher crossover. And there were some good stories in this one too, but it wasn't the same. And I think what's his name, was Grant was writing most of them. Yeah, Mike Baron, I think, came at the end of this epic, because it collects Punisher 1 to 10 of his regular series in this, so maybe he wrote some of that. But for whatever reason, this previous volume I didn't have as much fun with as this Kingpin Rules one. This one was really out there in some ways. And then next up we got Epic Collection of the Punisher Volume 5, and this is his material from 1990 to 1991. And this one's called Jigsaw Puzzle, and as you can guess, Jigsaw does show up in this, and there is a Jigsaw puzzle, like I guess 6-issue storyline. And Punisher was so popular at this time in the 90s that the issues in here of the ongoing series were actually coming out at every 2 weeks. Like when you see the covers in these Epic collections, like it'll show that. It'll say like now every 2 weeks, and like as a result they had to get a lot of different artists coming on the book. But like I guess the book was so hot at that period in time, people just wanted Punisher. I mean, we're talking about the 90s here, right? So the early 90s. So, you know, I'm sure at that point he was like, oh, look at this badass character, you know, he's running around killing people, because, you know, he wasn't that outlandish before, when he would just show up randomly in these Spider-Man issues back in the day, right? Like now it's just like, it was kind of like, getting kind of ridiculous, like the way he would just he was just going around killing everybody, right? So but yeah, it's this was also good. I'd say the best artist on this again was Tex, like Mark Texeira. This also collects Punisher 35 to 48 of the regular series. It's volume 5, and so there's actually volume 4 that still needs to come out from the Epic Collection. So as you can see with the releases, they came out with Kingpin Rules volume 3, and then they brought out volume 5. So like I said, they don't bring them out in order. But this 35 to 48 annual 4, and it also had like the prestige format issues of Punisher No Escape and Punisher The Prize, which were like these one-shot issues that they did with different teams that came out outside of the regular series. I think they were just more of like the prestige style format issues. Like these are the issues that were kind of made of better, different paper stock and were thicker a little bit than your regular issue of a comic, and they used to make people pay a bit more for them. So like, you know, writers are Gregory Wright, Mike Barron, Chris Henderson, and Chuck Dixon, with D.G. Chichester and George Carragone. Pencilers Todd Smith, Bill Reinhold, Mark Texeira, Jack Slam, Mike Harris, Neil Hansen, Hugh Haynes, and John Herbert, with Tom Morgan. So I don't know a lot of those artists, to be honest. The one I'm most familiar with was Mark Texeira, and Mark Texeira was the best one, to be honest with you, that I enjoyed seeing on this book. I wish they had stuck with him for more of this, but because of the schedule, you know, they had a lot of these other artists, like these no-name artists I've never heard of, which may have been popular at that time. But if you look at some of the stuff in this book, I don't feel that it was up to snuff with some of the other earlier talents that they had on this one. So as a result, I felt, although I think I like the stories more so in this, or just as much, I didn't enjoy this one as much as the Kingpin Rules ones overall, because I think the art was lacking a bit in this one compared to the other one. And the one-shot stories that they had in this, with like U.S. Agent was in it, and Paladin and stuff like that, and that's I think that's the No Escape one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, No Escape. That was okay. It was kind of interesting just to see, again, that period of time. U.S. Agent was like supposed to be like the Captain America or whatever, and he's fucking crazy too, like, you know what I mean? Like, he'll kill people and shit. So it was interesting for that reason. And again, I also like this one. It kind of followed with the same type of story, like the way that the story is, with him traveling around and kind of coming across people, with the inclusion of there's also a return of this dude that can heal people. Like, he's like, almost feels like he's like like not the son of God, but basically that God gave him these powers to be able to heal. He's actually from the first, I think, 10 issues that came in that second epic volume of the Punisher ongoing series. He was a bad guy that was in those, and he actually makes a return at this point, 30 issues later in the Punisher ongoing series. So that was kind of cool to see him again. So if you guys are familiar with that from volume 2 of the Circle of Blood epic collection, you'll see a reappearance of that character, as well as Jigsaw. That's that whole Jigsaw puzzle storyline. So that was interesting. I was probably my favorite in this, just because, you know, to see like the classic Jigsaw, like Punisher kind of standoff with one of his classic villains and all that, plus the recurring guy from like 30 issues previous. That was kind of neat. And then you find out he feels that he's getting his powers from the devil as opposed to God. So there's that whole thing. So, but they kind of continue with the same story formula as Mike Barron was doing previous to this. So if you were into that other epic collection, you have yet to read this one. It's definitely in the same vein, just less art. I felt like the quality was not as good as the other one. So next up, we got Wolverine Epic Collection, Back to Basics. This is volume 2 in his Epic Collection line. This is issues from 1989 to 1990, and it collects Wolverine 17 to 30 of the ongoing series, as well as the Wolverine Nick Fury The Scorpio Connection, and Wolverine The Jungle Adventure. Now, this was not good. I was very disappointed. Again, I collect all the Wolverine epics too, because I'm also a fan of this character. Another character who was very popular at that time because he was just introduced earlier in the 80s. And yeah, so Wolverine and Punisher were both very popular at that time as like the more badass Marvel characters going into the 90s, and hence why probably why I like these characters so much to this day. Like, I'm still fans of both these characters, and I've bought every epic that's out of both these characters currently. But this one was not good. Oh man, was this not good. I don't know. I'll say the treat of this was Wolverine the Jungle Adventure, which had early Mike Mignola art prior to Hellboy and Walter Simonson writing it. So at the start of this, you had you got like two of those like original graphic novel type stories, which was the Scorpio Connection, which actually has Howard Chaykin on art, and the writer of that one was Archie Goodwin, so that was also enjoyable. But my favorite was the Walter Simonson written Mike Mignola Jungle Adventure one, which was just great. For the Mike Mignola art alone, but the story was cool too. But then after that, when you get to the ongoing series of Wolverine, there are some fucking stinkers in that one. So basically, his ongoing series, which I'm kind of surprised about, because at the same time, I like his writing quite a bit, but this was just not working for me. Let me just see here. Those was also... Okay, so... which ones did he write then? Maybe he came at the end. So Peter David's credited as a writer on some of these issues. I think he comes on afterwards. These Archie Goodwin written ones were not good, and John Byrne was just credited as the breakdown artist. And Klaus Johnson was doing the inks on it, but his pencils were just like, again, I've seen rush John Byrne or like half-assed John Byrne stuff, so I'm thinking that's what this is, which is a shame because John Byrne, with his great X-Men work that he's done, this just does not look good to me. And I'm like, there's only so much an inker can do, and Klaus Johnson is a heavy-handed inker in that regard, like where you can change the art to kind of look like his style. But this didn't look like Klaus Johnson that much, maybe in some places. But so I gotta think, like, if he was doing the inks over this, he may have even done most of the completed artwork, because John Byrne they just have credited as breakdown artists on a lot of these, and it doesn't look great at all. Like, even like loose pencils might be like, I don't know, like I don't know what he was given. I'd be interested to hear that, like what he was given for him to complete and finish this art, because the art was bad in this. Like, there was a lot of, I don't know, I just didn't dig it, and I love Klaus Johnson, I like John Byrne, but a lot of this just didn't look right. I just was not a fan of this art. So when you hear those names, you're like, oh shit, like look at the art team on this book. You got fucking Mike Mignola, you got Howard Chaykin, you got fucking Klaus Johnson, you got John Byrne. But yeah, this John Byrne was not good. Like, yeah, and those are all some great names, so you might actually pick this up and be like, wow, it's like a fucking art tour de force. Like, this is great, right? Like, look at all this. Gene Colan does inks on some of this. John Buscema, yeah, because John Buscema did some issues of the Wolverine series as well. Barry Kitson, like, to be honest, yeah, looking at this list of artists on this book, yeah, they're all fucking good artists. I mean, there's some great names for this period of time of Marvel and Wolverine, so it's not like they weren't putting good people on the book. I just felt like these Archie Goodwin issues that John Byrne was drawing just didn't look great. The story was fucking weird and boring. They were kind of stories that you wouldn't expect Wolverine to be on. I think at this point they were still trying to kind of figure out who he was as a character outside of the X-Men stuff. But even if you look at the previous volume 1 of the Epic Collections of Wolverine, where he has those Marvel Comic Presents awesome Chris Claremont issues though with Buscema, I mean that's great stuff. I mean, that first volume compared to the second volume, I was like really looking forward to the second volume. I was like, oh nice, we're actually going to delve into, I've never read any of this stuff, right? So I was really excited for this, but the stories were not good. They were boring. The art wasn't great. They were strange stories. I don't know, man. It just didn't work for me on any level other than outside of those original graphic novels that I talked about. Yeah, I mean, like, look, I'm just going to read it off the back here because it basically says, when his old enemy Roughhouse is kidnapped from like Japan, like, because at the start of this he's still kind of going by that whole persona from in Madripoor, the Patch persona, and then yeah, the Roughhouse is kidnapped. Wolverine follows a trail of tainted cocaine from Madge report to Central America, but can the young revolutionary La Bandera help a sick and infected Wolverine survive against Tiger Shark and bring down a corrupt regime? This is like, it was basically like a poor man's Punisher story, it felt like, you know what I mean? Like, why is Wolverine fucking out in some other country tracking down like some tainted cocaine? You know what I mean? Like, that's fucking weird, right? Like, and, you know, I know Wolverine's always there to help out a person in need, like, that's kind of him, but I don't know, it just felt like, in comparison about and coming out, I mean, I have to compare it in a way because it's coming out around the same time, and it's similar like stories. And like I said, maybe they felt this was going to be like another type of like a mutant Punisher, essentially. Like, it just felt weird. Like, you had stories like that already in the Punisher epic type stuff that were just not as weird and put together better than this was. And I don't know, the art, like I said, this is bad John Byrne art in my opinion. And then Peter David came on, I think, afterwards. He wrote some of this. Joe Duffy. I think Peter David must have come on right at the end. I don't know. I would even say if that's the case, it's not Peter David's best either. I'm just trying to look at which issues he specifically wrote right now because I'm having a hard time tracking it down. Oh, yeah, this art was great. Who is this again? See, there was a good artist in some of this stuff. Oh, yeah, and then you have, like, Wolverine pinups by Todd McFarlane in this. That was awesome. Yeah, this is Joe Duffy. I didn't like that story at all either. Yeah, so Joe Duffy didn't do a great job in her stories as well. There's one issue. Oh, yes, of course, that's why. Claus Johnson, okay, penciled, and Tom Palmer inks. There's one issue 26, and this is a Joe Duffy written one. The story was fine, but I think there was another Japan story. This looked great. I mean, again, big fan of Claus Johnson, so that's why I'm like, even looking at this, I'm like, there's no fucking way that was all mostly, like, I mean, I guess it was mostly all Claus Johnson if John Byrne was just a breakdown artist, but, like, he must have been giving, like, the fucking loosest pencils known to man, and he was trying to keep it to look like John Byrne art, and this looked like rush shitty John Byrne, so I was like, woo, not good. But yeah, there's some great pin-up pieces in this, some great covers, some great art, too. Like I said, the Mignola stuff, the Chaykin stuff's good. So it's just a mixed fucking bag, and I've heard that sometimes that's the case with these epics, but like a lot of them have been a mixed bag of like good stuff, like good to great, where this was just like good to shit to good. Like, I'm sorry, I really didn't like the ongoing Wolverine series, and I'm a big fan of the character. Maybe you'll feel differently, but for me it didn't work at all. And then last off, we got Daredevil Epic Collection. This is Heart of Darkness. This is volume 14 in the Daredevil Epic line that collects issues from 1989 to 1990. During that period, this is Daredevil 271 to 282, annuals 5 to 6, and material from Punisher Annual 3, Incredible Hulk Annual 16, and Silver Surfer Annual 3. Outside of those annual crossovers, which was the Lifeform crossover issues, which weren't good. Yeah, Lifeform, which weren't great at all, is where they cross over between all four annuals. That story is a big stinker, and because it goes across all kind of books at that time, there's varying degrees of art and writing. And they put that, I think it's right at the back of this epic collection, so just ignore that one. I wouldn't even suggest you need to read that. So obviously, if you're a completist and you've picked up the epic, check it out if you're at all interested, but that's not good. But this is basically the second epic now that they've brought out that's collected the Ann Nocenti Daredevil run, and obviously it has John Romita Jr. art on it, and it's fantastic. Like, this is a great period of John Romita. John Romita is an artist that sometimes doesn't always work for me, and it depends, what era and what book we're talking about in terms of John Romita art. The more though I've seen his older stuff, the more I've been into his older stuff than his more recent stuff, I must say. But yeah, this is a great period for and Ann Nocenti was the writer that had to come on after Frank Miller's run on Daredevil, and a lot of people said it wasn't as great because you're talking about Frank Miller's Daredevil run, for one, and two, I think it's actually a pretty good run. All that being said, it holds up pretty well. There's some crazy stuff in this one as well too, though, but with the John Romita Jr. visuals, oh man, this is a great period of John Romita Jr. art. Again, for the art, this was just alone, this was a treat, and I think there's going to be one more volume that's coming out this summer that will cap off the Ann Nesenti run of Daredevil. So you're going to have the whole Ann Nesenti run on Daredevil collected in these epic collections. So that'll be great. I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, I mean, in this, he continued, there's some interesting thing where he gets like this woman android, in this, away from somebody who like created her in a lab, and then she becomes like part of like the group with Daredevil, but she's like this really like, this woman, like, it's almost like sexist towards women. Like she's basically like a living Barbie doll android, where she just wants to cook and clean and make her man happy and stuff. And the creator that created her, that they took her from, basically made her that way. So there's like a lot of interest, and like there's a woman on the team with Daredevil that's like this environmentalist person, that her father has all these slaughterhouses, and he kind of came across her and tried to help her, but then found out that she was actually trying to screw over her father, and there was just a lot of bad blood between her and her father. And like the slaughterhouses that she's trying to expose, he owns. But then her father also was involved in making these fucking androids. I don't know. I know it's really fucking weirded out there, but that's why I actually kind of love it. It's really, again, weird stories being told, definitely of its time. But along with the John Romita Jr. visuals, it was just so much fun. And yeah, weird, offbeat, like Daredevil stories. It kind of went far away from whatever kind of, Frank Miller established during his period of time on the book. I mean, there's a crossover with Doctor Doom and Ultron in this during the that villain event that basically they all faced off against like other people's villains, which I'm blanking on the name right now, that happened in Marvel back in the day. So you get that in this. The Inhumans come into the book at one point. What's it called? Acts of Vengeance. Yeah, that's the one where like all the villains kind of switched up and attacked different heroes. It was like some sort of like Marvel crossover event within their books back then. That one's excellent. You get Doctor Doom and Ultron drawn by John Romita Jr. Al Williamson on inks on all of this, mostly for him too. Just great stuff. Yeah, that's a really fun issue. And then, because of the Ultron being in it, you get the whole Ultron talking to the other android, this woman, and them actually making a connection and stuff like that, who just happens to be with Daredevil in this book as an ongoing character at this point, like part of his group. So yeah, I can't praise this enough. And then you got like the Mephisto kind of makes a return that was in the previous volume during, I guess, Inferno. Which gets really fucking crazy. That was in the previous volume of the Epic Collections by Ann Nesenti as well. So Mephisto and what was his name? Black Star, or his son, whatever his name is, he basically makes an appearance again in this, Mephisto's son, and yeah, and then Thor shows up. There's some other Marvel characters that show up. Oh, Silver Surfer shows up. That's right. Again, the art is just so good. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about this one either. The only stinker in the bunch, like I told you, was for Wolverine, but it's worth picking up for some of the art in it. I will say, still, the stories may not all be great, but there's a couple of good ones with the original graphic novels of the Mike Mignola Jungle Adventure. And if you're a completist on the Wolverine Epic line, then I'm sure if you're hearing me talk about this, you already own it, or you plan on buying it. So just be fair warned, I was just not a fan of it. But yeah, otherwise Daredevil was fantastic, probably my favorite of the bunch, and the Punisher had some really great stuff in it too. But I think with the Punisher, you got to be a big fan of the character to kind of go along with a lot of what happens in those ones. But again, the Kingpin rules, great art in that one as well. All right, guys, so that does it for me. I've talked way too much on this one about these epic collections, but it's just a fantastic format that I love that's coming out from Marvel. So if you've yet to pick up an epic collection, go ahead and do yourself a favor and grab one today. There's over 20 lines, I think, of different characters' books. And if you Google for it, there's an Epic Collection list that they have, I think, on Wikipedia or even another site that lists all the different volumes that are currently out. Just be fair warned, some of them are out of print. Like, for instance, I think this Daredevil Heart of Darkness one is currently, so it might be harder to find for cover price, but good luck to you. All right, everybody, I'll see you guys next time, and look forward to another episode of Trade Talk that will be dropping a day after this one's released. Thanks.